Hey guys, Jeff Franks here. Some of you may know me. Some of you probably only know me as a Facebook troll. I promise that's not my goal in life. I just like to have good information. And I've got about 35 years of IT experience behind me. And a lot of that time has been in and around data centers of all sizes. So I just wanted to kind of address a little bit here and get some true facts out there. So there's been a lot of talk about banning data centers, both in our county and around the country for that matter. And some of the wording concerns me because data centers mean a lot of different things, and we know what the intent is. The intent is these large mega scale, hyperscale, AI sized campuses where you have buildings that are millions of square feet. They're running maybe 1,000 megawatts of power through it, all of those kinds of things, and that's huge. That's a big deal. But that's not what all data centers look like. In fact, that's not what most data centers look like. Most every data center that I've ever worked in or been around is actually very, very small. A data center is just a place, a building or a room that actually facilitates your servers, your network communications. It could be your security, it could be your backup power, all of those things inside of one area. And that's what the definition of a data center is. So does a super-sized Facebook data center fit that criteria? Yeah, absolutely. But so does the data center that's sitting inside your doctor's office that holds their servers, that holds your medical data for when you go to the doctor. Also, the banks have data centers inside of those. I know we're not talking about those when we're worried about our big concerns, but that still qualifies as a data center. All right, we're going to play a game called Spot the Data Center. And this is primarily just to show that data centers aren't what necessarily everyone thinks of as data centers. So we're in Cool Springs area. And you might recognize where we're driving through and to if you've ever shopped in the area. That's in Bank of America, which by the way has a data center inside of it by definition. And Dana, you're with me here, so shout out when you spot the data center.
Really?
Yeah. Really. I'm just gonna drive. If I see one, I'll point it out myself. And Dana, if you see one, you point it out.
I don't even know what a data center looks like.
Yeah. You're not alone.
So I'm not going to get to shout it out.
Well, if you notice it, apparently it's going to have big burling black smoke coming out the top of it. Water gushing down into the drains and that kind of thing. Some of you might recognize this. I'm just going to drive by it real quick. This is the old Service Merchandise headquarters. Those of you old enough to remember Service Merchandise. This is what used to be their office just off of I-65 off Moore's Lane. There is a considerably sized co-location data center on the first floor of this building. It has all of the power, all of the water consumption, the cooling consumption that supposedly is so negative inside of this one building here. But you've driven by this for your entire life, going to Nashville on I-65, and never realized there was a data center. We're going to drive around back real quick. Now we're on the back side of this building, and I want to point something out. Here are your generators, and if you'll notice, they're not making any noise, no smoke's coming out, they're not running. So data center generators, for the most part, do not run unless there's an emergency power outage. They do run them about 10 to 15 minutes a month just to make sure that they're still functioning. All right, now we're back behind the Cool Springs Mall area, just back in a more, it's an industrial park type area. We have several buildings. You can see these buildings here. There's a dance studio. This is your data center. Just looks like a standard office building. around here just to see where the backside of this looks like. Here are your generators and cooling towers. Cooling towers are running. You might be able to hear a little bit of that. Very quiet. And your generators are back here. But again, generators are not running. Why? Because they have electricity. They don't need generators. All right, so this is a little more difficult to spot. We're on Carruthers Parkway on the other side of the interstate in Cool Springs. And we're about to pass one here on the left. Actually, we're going to pass it one more bit there. And this is, gotta get this. This is a little more secure facility. They actually have security around it, as you can see. But that is a data center. This one is probably, if I had to guess, 50% larger than the one going in, proposed to go into Lawrenceburg. So just to give you some idea. So this one is another data center that you may have passed if you've ever come to Tennessee Oncology in Cool Springs. It's sitting right beside it. It does have the gate. It's a little more secure facility. Another co-location, basically meaning that they rent out space to different companies. So most of these are called co-location facilities. And basically that's where a data center company has all their storage, all their space, their racks, their power, cooling, that kind of thing. And if I own a company that needs a place to host my servers, I put it in their data center. I take my equipment in there and put it in a rack, pay them a monthly fee, and they basically take care of my servers for me. That's a co-location facility. And as you can see, most of those data centers look like a normal office building. I mean, they're not big, evil looking buildings that people are, I guess, should be scared of or be concerned about their environmental impact and that kind of thing, because there is really no environmental impact beyond just the normal cost of doing business that almost any business would do. Now, I will admit that when you look at the hyperscale size and the AI models, those size data centers, they are definitely much, much larger. And yes, there have been some bad actors out there who have used their generators for main power because they were fighting with local utilities to try to get it turned on, and maybe they didn't follow the rules or that type of thing. But that's not what we're dealing with in most cases. Most cases, it's just a business, hooks up power, usually power from multiple utility systems, and sometimes straight from the TVA type thing in our area. And they just go to work. But that distinction really does matter. I'm not just saying this for the fun of it. It's actually something that we should be paying attention to, because data centers of the AI scale and the hyperscale, those are extremely large. If you're in the Middle Tennessee area, you know, an AI data center, a Google data center, for example, in Huntsville, it's larger than the Saturn plant in Spring Hill, Tennessee. It's millions of square feet and takes a lot of power, a lot of cooling. That's not what we're talking about. So let's talk about exactly what is going on with the Lawrenceburg proposed data center. The data center being proposed in Lawrenceburg is what's called a 5 megawatt facility. So that means that they are proposing to get up to 5 megawatts of power. The plans as they have been presented is that they expect to run between 3.7 and 4.7 megawatts, all depending on heat outside. It's mainly used for cooling and for running the servers and that kind of thing. So depending on the weather outside will kind of depend on how much power that they actually use. But at that level, according to the LUS and the people we've spoke to, that actually puts this data center around number 4 for all of LUS's customers. So they're not even the largest, not even the second largest or the third, they're number 4. And that's if they're running full bore. So power in and of itself, yeah, they're using more power than we would if they didn't exist, but then so is Waffle House, and so is any of these other places, any new business, any new plant, any of that kind of thing that comes in. So as long as they're paying their bill, then they're using the power. So let's talk about the water. Water consumption is one of those things that people are mostly concerned about in a lot of cases when it comes to data center and how much they use and how much they're going to take out of the water system and how much they're going to put back in. So for the Lawrenceburg data center, the usage that is in the plans and what is actually being applied for is 20,000 gallons, not per day, not per month, really 20,000 gallons that should last them about 2 years. And you're laughing thinking that's crazy, but let me explain how it works. So in the old days, there was a way you just pumped water through and dumped it back out because sometimes it would get contaminated and you couldn't reuse it very much. That's not the way data centers work anymore. Data centers want to make as much money as they can, so they're trying to be as efficient as they can. So the way this works now and the way that they are planning on doing this is it'll take about 20,000 gallons to fill up their coolant system the first time. They're going to run it, basically flush the system, get it all working the way it's supposed to, and then they're going to dump that 20,000 gallons. Are they going to dump it into a septic system or into the sewer? They don't even have a sewer system or a septic system that's going to be hooked up to this thing. It's actually going to be dumped into trucks and trucked out of the county to a TDEC approved treatment facility where they will dump that water and let somebody take care of that and make it safe again, I guess. Then they fill back up with another 20,000 gallons. And that 20,000 gallons, they have to monitor it and make sure that watch for buildup and minerals and that kind of thing from the system. But they expect that 20,000 gallons to last 2 to 3 years for their coolant system. So 20,000 gallons expected to last 2 to 3 years after the initial 20,000. So 40,000 gallons of water. This pool just so happens to take 40,000 gallons of water. So half of this pool is what will be used over every 2 years, if you want to think of it that way. The full 40,000, including the initial flush, and then 20,000 after that. That's the water usage that's in the plan. Now look, I'm not pro data center or anti data center. I work in data centers, so I'm around them and I know what they are like and I know how they're used, and I'm not an expert even in data centers. I just have some experience with them. So I'm not here trying to say that we need one or we don't need one in Lawrence County or Lawrenceburg or any place like that. That's not for me to say. I just want actual factual information to be used when we're discussing this. If you want to ban data centers, fine, that's great. You go ban data centers. But know what you're talking about when you say that. Usually what you should be saying is you want to ban hyperscale data centers or 50 megawatt data centers, something like that, where you're actually getting into the size that makes a big difference. Do I want a data center in my backyard? Not really. But would it destroy me? Do I think I'm going to be kept up at night by the noise, or that it's going to pollute the area around me, or that I think it's going to drain the water tables, from my well? No, that's just not the case. So we've talked about power, we've talked about water. Those seem to be the two big ones. Just general environmental. We've talked about the fact that the generators aren't running, so you're not going to have big diesel plumes coming out the top of it or anything like that. And then you have, additional concerns. There's this thing that has come out recently about vibrations. I'm not even going to begin to understand what they're talking about there. In my years of working in data centers, I've never been vibrated. I can promise you that. I'm not trying to make us the next Williamson County. That's not the point of this. The point of this is just to get the facts out there so that people understand what they're talking about when they're talking about banning data centers. Data centers come in all sizes. I used the example several times online about the fact that if you were to have trouble with kids riding their skateboards in the Walmart parking lot, and Walmart was to come out and say, we want to ban the skateboards. Skateboards are a vehicle, so we're going to ban all vehicles from our parking lot. That's kind of what we're doing here. We're overextending because we're not calling what we're concerned about out. So we've got to be sure that we do that. This data center going in Lawrenceburg, I don't know anything about them. I've never dealt with them. I've never even heard of them before this. I've never been inside one of their data centers, so I don't know all of their ins and outs, but I do know that they have some specific things that they have to follow. I know they're trying to make money, so they're trying to be as efficient as possible. And I know any business is going to want to going to want to have, good neighbors and be neighborly and that kind of thing and stay out of lawsuits. And so if they were environmentally a problem, the state would have a problem there and they would be dealing with that. So I'm not pushing for them. I'm just saying, let's stop and take a breath, figure out what exactly we're talking about here. I'm more concerned about the zoning side of stuff than I am the fact that the data centers going in. And I would just hope that you would take your time and maybe understand what I'm saying a little bit, take it for what it's intended to be, not an attempt to sway you, but just to inform you. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm Jeff. Have a great one.